Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market, and let's talk about what is happening in the market today, what we can expect moving forward, and all of that good stuff. So if you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, I do share my thoughts with my members every single day the market is open in my YouTube membership. That link is down below. For just $3 a month, you get access to my posts, thoughts, updates, etc. Every single day the market is open, so definitely check it out if you're interested. Or for $5 a month, you get access to my second tier, which of course also includes NVDA. But jumping into it, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's talk about what happened. I'm just looking at the after hours movement right now. We're seeing is pretty wild across the board. NVIDIA, AMD, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, especially, of course, being the two that just reported earnings, seemingly have nice beats. So yeah, all that being said, let's talk about it. What is happening with Tesla? What can we expect moving into, let's say, the rest of the week, maybe even into next week, right? So let's start off with the 1 hour chart this time, right? So we got that pretty significant drop across the board in the market today, right? But you know, a respectable amount of that, I guess you can call it dip, has been bought up, right? It has been bought up on Tesla stock in this case. So what does this actually mean moving forward though, right? I mean, Tesla stock, you know, it is in a bit of a peculiar situation here in the sense that, you know, so yesterday we talked about that bearish divergence. We talked about the call flow coming in, etc. But we also mentioned how, I mean, my personal indicators that I, usually put a decent amount of weight into is, divergences on the 1 hour time frame. More specifically, especially if the divergence begins occurring in an overbought or an oversold territory. In this case, it obviously didn't overbought, right? Where obviously we had price going higher, but RSI had lower, and the MACD also, they both had headed lower while the price headed higher, right? Nice classic divergence. And we got that nice massive drop. Now, essentially, the way I'm looking at Tesla, we also broke this low over here. So the way I'm looking at Tesla is this, right? Because we broke this low over here, right? We're still, in my opinion, a little bit more on the weaker end of the spectrum, especially as long as now Tesla remains below this high that we put up pretty much on yesterday's high. As long as we're below that, I do still think Tesla is on the more weaker end of the spectrum, at least for now, right? Which is essentially pretty much below 293 to, honestly, just at this point, might as well add that 295, that $2 range. As long as we're below this range, Tesla is still on the more weaker end of the spectrum. And I do still think that there's more of a chance that we head lower than higher for now, right? But again, this is the short term. I want to make that very, very clear. This is short term. I'm not talking about, this is like the next few days, maybe to a week, at most 2 weeks, probably up to a week though. I'll be surprised if it's more than that. Again, because, we have the MACD now crossing bearish on the 1 hour as well. There's just small weakness right now. The way I'll be looking at this also is because, we broke below this, rising trend line, which I will now remove. I just kept it there for the sake of the video. But, this trend line right here, we're obviously broke down below that on the gap down. So, seeing these kind of factors tells me that the upside move is probably going to be on the more slower end, at least for now. And there's two ways I'm going to be looking at it moving forward for the downside in the short term. Again, short term. There's two perspectives. One, on the 1 hour chart, is going to be this kind of slightly descending channel, or arguably even a bull flag. You can absolutely make an argument that this is essentially just a massive bull flag being played out. And maybe we get a premature breakout. That is absolutely a possibility. I'm not completely denying that as a possibility, but something we'll watch for, of course. We could get a premature breakout, and this is the more bullish perspective I have right now on Tesla stock for the short term on the 1 hour time frame, because this means that, even if we drop, let's say, one more leg further, we'll probably enter like maybe the high 260s. And, that is a chance that that's all she wrote. And we essentially get a nice, kind of breakout like this, right? That absolutely is a possibility. Again, this is the more bullish perspective, right? The more still overall bullish, but short-term, a slightly more bearish perspective is that we actually end up just essentially zigzagging down even further and ultimately make our way to truly retest this zone all the way down here closer to, like, let's say about 260. Those are my main two conditions right now on Tesla stock that I see for the short term, right? Whichever one happens to play out, again, I'm not 100% sure which one will play out, but as of right now, I see one of those two situations. Now, again, like I said, if this happens to be stronger than I expected, if we happen to rally, sooner than expected for, again, whatever reason, right? You never know sometimes with these stocks. And we essentially break, essentially out of this little bit of a bull flag that's setting up here. We break above this kind of 293 to 295 range. Then, yeah, obviously we'll break out sooner than later. And, that's just how it's going to go, right? We don't know for sure, but it's good to keep these kind of options in mind, right? And that's the way I'll be looking at it for the most part, right? Then we have the daily chart. The daily chart is also a pretty nice chart here. Why is the daily chart a nice chart? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, we are slightly, overextended, you can argue. Again, this is why short term, I'm still kind of leaning that maybe we're not going to explode anywhere too high just yet, mainly because you can see where the market bias is and where we are right now. We're, not a crazy amount higher, but we're definitely a little bit on the more extended side, at least for the short term. So that's number one. But with that being said, we did come back down to essentially retest this trend line. You can see, remember this trend line over here that we got started from all-time highs, got double rejection over here, and then we broke out of it a few days ago. And you can make an argument that, hey, this was just nothing more than a nice little retest on that trend line, right? Absolutely a possibility to go along with that sort of thesis. So let's see how that plays out, right? That's also something to consider. But like I also mentioned, if we do get that short-term weakness, we could still kind of hug towards the bottom end of this trend line and get a few more retests on the lower end of the spectrum, down to maybe closer to 260s even, right? And then we rocket up. But essentially, the way I want Tesla to play out is I want it to essentially start forming what will eventually look more obvious, obviously by then, but will eventually look like a large daily bull flag, essentially, right? Where it'll look just something like this, and then we blast off, right? And this is why I personally believe the daily is definitely on the more bullish side than the bearish side for sure, in my opinion, of course. And I do think that if we were to look at price, let's say maybe in 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, I would expect price within that range to definitely at some point have been higher than even the high that we said yesterday or the day before, right? I do expect that. Like I still lean bullish on the daily chart. I think the daily chart overall zoomed out looks good. Looks pretty damn good, right? I don't see any major problems. I see nice breakouts. I see nice potential accumulation beginning to start, right? If we get a lower volume sell off and we start kind of zigzagging slower and getting tighter and making this little bull flag or wedge or whatever it could be, I will view that as obviously pretty bullish, especially if we kind of do that into the market bias. Like this is the ideal scenario. Like if I had to just be like, well, what would I love to see Tesla do within the next few days to a week? How would I like it to set up to really make that move and get, just ready to rip higher, potentially within a week or two or something like that, right? Again, it will be essentially a low volume sell-off right back into the market bias support as it slowly inches its way up to us. We kind of meet in the middle, set up this kind of bull flag / wedge. And again, it'll just be something like this. And then we head higher, roughly. That's my personal situation. Like if I was the master planner and I can like design the chart and I can force it to do what I would want it to do in the most beautiful way possible, this would be it. This is my honest opinion. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean we're going to get this, right? The market doesn't care what I want or what I think, but this would be the healthiest, the beautifulest, just the nicest way to set things up for that next leg higher, which I do think is coming. I still think Tesla's looking overall good, personally speaking, at least as of right now. I don't see any issues as of right now. Obviously that can change, but as of right now, I don't see any problems. So let's see how that plays out. But that's going to be the main way I'll be looking at Tesla moving forward. And then of course we have the weekly, which also doesn't look too bad. You can see this area back here. If I zoom in on the weekly here, you can take a look over here, right? Check it out, right? You can see, right? Look how many weeks in a row, like even just these 4 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, right? Look how much supply there was in this area. Anytime it went up anywhere to about 260 to as high as 290, this sort of $30 range right here. Anytime it's wicked anywhere into there, each and every single week it's been smacked back down, with also leaving these pretty decently large wicks towards the upper end of the spectrum. Then of course, naturally, we had this nice volume candle over here. We broke above that. We closed above that last week. And now we're arguably taking this general vicinity and once again, turning this area that was obviously in, very painfully obvious a area of supply, resistance, etc. And now we're trying to turn it back into demand, supports. And I expect that to continue, which is why, again, on the bigger time frames, I do lean bullish. I absolutely still lean bullish, unless obviously something drastic changes, which at that point, is anyone's guess. But with the data I see in front of me and the information I see present in front of me right now, yeah, I lean bullish. I absolutely lean bullish on the larger time frames, at the very least for Tesla to re-enter the kind of on the lower end of the 300s, like maybe 310, 320, maybe even closer to 330, like at the minimum. I'd be surprised if we don't get that within the next sometime in May, I should say. Let's just say that. I don't want to give timeframes. I don't know exactly when, but sometime in May. I'd be pretty surprised. I'd be pretty genuinely surprised if we don't get that. So let's see how this plays out. But that's going to be the main way I'll be looking at it, and that's kind of what I'm checking around. So again, TLDR, daily, weekly, I see no problems. Short term though, for the next few days, maybe up to a week even. Again, I don't know how long. I hate giving exact time frames. I don't like doing that. I do lean slightly bearish in the short term. I do think that we're going to slowly bleed our way down for the most part, but I believe that that's just going to be nothing more than potentially accumulation just setting up before we make our way higher for the next leg up. And that's kind of my perspective. So yeah, let's take a look at that and see what happens moving forward. But yeah, looking at options flow, the way I look at options flow here is towards the end of the day, nice call flow came in once again. We saw a lot of call flow in yesterday that obviously meant nothing. We ended up getting smacked down pretty aggressively today off of the jobs data and GDP, but nonetheless, the call flow is still pretty evident on Tesla stock. Obviously, the bulls are still definitely trying to step in on this thing and to really send it higher. But in terms of confirmed bearish or bullish flow, and Tesla is nowhere really to be found, so it's probably something pretty not meaningful. But either way, that's all I got for you. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.